The cicada's drone was the soundtrack of my life, a monotonous hum that lulled me into believing the world was a predictable, placid place. My father, a man of few words and unwavering routine, had only one hard rule that carried the weight of a commandment: stay out of the woods at night. Not just a warning, but a line drawn in the soil of our Iowa farm. He never explained why. He'd just look toward the dense tree line, his jaw tightening, and say, "Some shadows, Jack, aren't meant to be stirred. The woods at night, they ain't for us." His warning should have been enough, but it was the very mystery of it that gnawed at me. And then the sounds began. It started last summer, a week after my 18th birthday. It wasn't the screech of a fox or the howl of a coyote, sounds I'd known since childhood. This was a human sound, a low, guttural moan that sliced through the thick night air, so full of despair it made the hair on my arms stand up. It came from the deep woods beyond the back 40. The first time, I convinced myself it was the wind whistling through a hollow log. The second night, it came again, longer, more desperate, ending in a choked sob. I stood frozen at my bedroom window, the cool pane of glass against my forehead, staring into the impenetrable darkness. I confronted my father at breakfast, his face hidden behind the local Gazette. "Did you hear that last night? Sounded like someone was hurt out in the woods." The paper didn't lower. "Told you, Jack. Woods are full of strays and fools. Best to leave 'em be." His voice was flat, final, but I saw the way his knuckles whitened around the edges of the newspaper. He was lying, or at least he knew more than he was saying. That unspoken knowledge was a key turning in a lock. The moan became a siren's call, a secret I was no longer content to ignore. It wasn't just curiosity, it was a pull, a compulsion. That sound was a thread, and if I pulled it, the entire careful tapestry of my quiet life might unravel. The night of the full moon, I made my choice. The silver light bleached the color from the world, turning the familiar path into a monochrome trail of secrets. I took my father's heavy steel flashlight and his old shotgun, more for the weight of its authority than any intent to use it. My heart was a wild drum against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that seemed to scream, "Turn back," but I pushed on. The woods were a different country at night, ancient and watchful. Every rustle of a leaf was a footstep, every snap of a twig a warning. I followed the sound, a grim pilgrim navigating by anguish. And then I saw it, the old forester's shack. A place everyone had forgotten, a relic from a time before my grandfather. Its wood was rotted, its roof sagging like a tired spine. But from a grime-caked window, a faint, flickering light bled into the night. A candle, not the steady beam of an electric bulb. My breath hitched. This was it. The source of the sound, the reason for my father's strange apprehension. I moved as if in a trance, my boots making no sound on the soft earth. I became a shadow, clinging to the deeper shadows of the pines. I crept to the window, my pulse roaring in my ears, and wiped a small, clear circle on the filthy glass with a trembling thumb. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. There, in the center of the dust-choked room, tied to a central support beam with brutal efficiency, was a girl. Her wrists were bound behind the post with plastic zip ties, biting cruelly into her flesh. A tangled curtain of dark hair obscured most of her face, but what I could see was pale and smudged with dirt. She was dressed in simple, expensive-looking clothes, a cashmere sweater, now torn, dark jeans. This was no local, but it was her eyes that held me captive. They were wide, burning with a ferocious intensity. Not just fear, though that was there, a stark, primal terror, but also a blazing, unbroken hatred. She was not defeated. And then I saw him. A young man, maybe 25, slouched on a rickety wooden crate a few feet away. He wasn't a monster from a nightmare. He looked ordinary, even weary. He stared at the dirt floor, listlessly turning a half-empty bottle of water in his hands. He was her guard, her jailer, and in the slump of his shoulders I saw a prisoner of a different kind. I didn't know what came over me. Perhaps it was that fire in her eyes, a spark of life in this house of death. I saw past the victim, past the presumed ransom. I saw a fighter. As if sensing my presence, she lifted her head. Her gaze, sharp and intelligent, swept across the room and locked directly onto mine through the grimy pane. It lasted only a second, a heartbeat, but in that sliver of time, an entire conversation transpired in the silent language of desperation. She didn't scream. She didn't plead. She simply looked. And in that look was a raw, undeniable message. I see you. You are my only chance. I melted back into the darkness, my mind reeling. I couldn't just charge in. The setup was too professional. This wasn't a one-man operation. Over the next 3 agonizing days, I watched from a hidden vantage point. I saw a different man, older, with a cruel mouth and cold eyes, arrive in a dark, unmarked sedan to deliver supplies. He would speak in low, harsh tones to the younger guard before driving away. The pieces of a much larger, more dangerous puzzle were falling into place. My chance came on the 3rd evening. The younger man, the one I'd first seen, emerged from the shack. He looked agitated, scanning the tree line before striking out on a path that led deeper into the wilderness, probably to relieve himself or to make some kind of contact. This was my window. I didn't allow myself to think. I moved. The door was unlocked, a fatal oversight born of arrogance. The air inside was thick, stale, heavy with the smells of dust, sweat, and fear. She jerked her head up as I entered, her eyes wide. The hatred was gone, replaced by a fragile, blazing hope. "Quiet," I whispered, my voice rough with tension. I pulled out my multi-tool, my fingers fumbling as I sawed at the tough plastic restraints. Her skin was ice cold. "My name is Jack." "Emily," she croaked, her voice raw from disuse and screaming. "Emily Goldberg." The name hit me like a physical blow. Goldberg, as in Arthur Goldberg, the Chicago tech billionaire whose daughter's kidnapping had been all over the news for a week. The pieces snapped into a terrifying high-definition picture. This wasn't just a kidnapping, it was a national headline. And I was now squarely in the middle of it. We slipped out of the shack and into the twilight. The woods, once a place of terror, were now our ally. I could hear her ragged breaths behind me, but she never faltered, never slowed. She was pure adrenaline and will. We burst out of the tree line at the edge of our soybean field, the lights of the farmhouse a beautiful, impossible beacon in the distance. And that's when we heard it, a sharp, furious shout from behind us. The young guard had returned. I shoved Emily toward the tall weeds at the field's margin. "Run, to the farmhouse, straight to the door," I yelled. I turned, raising the shotgun, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. He stood at the edge of the woods, 20 yards away, silhouetted against the dark trees. He wasn't pointing a weapon. He just stood there, his face a mask of confusion and what looked like panic. We stared at each other across the expanse of the field, 2 players in a game we never asked to join. Then, without a word, he turned on his heel and vanished back into the shadows from which he came. It wasn't a victory, it was a reprieve. I knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't over. When I finally made it back to the house, Emily was on our porch, wrapped in one of my mother's quilts. My mother's arm was around her. My father stood silent and grim-faced in the doorway, already on the phone with the sheriff. The moonlight washed over Emily's face, erasing the terror, leaving behind an ethereal calm and a profound, staggering gratitude. Our eyes met, and in that moment I felt it, a seismic shift in the very foundation of my being. It wasn't just the rush of the rescue or the protective instinct she evoked. It was the dawning realization that her world of danger, wealth, and ruthless ambition had collided with mine, and nothing would ever be simple again. I had pulled on the thread, and now I was entangled in the weave. Saving someone is one thing. It's a moment of action, of heroism. But when you look into the eyes of the person you've saved and see not just your reflection, but the ghost of every danger that still pursues her, the shadow of the life you've irrevocably lost, you understand. That's when it begins. Love doesn't always arrive quietly. Sometimes it comes on the back of a desperate moan from a dark wood, a silent promise made through a dirty window, and the chilling knowledge that the shadows you stirred are now hunting you both.